It's your teen and tween librarian, Rebecca, and I'm so excited tonight because we're going to try something a little bit different for bedtime stories. I have invited some guests this week to read fairy tales to you from the works of Andrew Lang. Mainly because I'm getting ready for our next book, so I need some time to prepare for that. And secondly, I feel like you might be sick of my face already. But I'm very excited because we're going to be discussing the works of Andrew Lang, as I mentioned, who is a Scottish folklorist who was born 1844 and died 1912. So he was a little bit younger than the Brothers Grimm, but around that same time. In fact, a lot of Lang's works are pretty recognizable. He tells some similar stories like Three Little Pigs, Rapunzel, Rumpelstiltskin. A few of those I think you've heard of, right? But he also does retellings of various folklore from around the world and collected them in his fairy books. The first one, and I can actually show you this book, was called The Blue Fairy Book, and featured Beauty and the Beast, Goldilocks, Hansel and Gretel, a bunch of famous stories, as well as some you've never heard of before. Now this book I actually just purchased for the library. It's currently in my home right now, obviously, but it will eventually be in the YT collection. And I love this publishing. It's by Racehorse for young readers. They have these beautiful hardbacks that are actually stitched and not glued. How fancy is that? And they have some beautiful artwork, and the publishing is really slick. So we have the Blue Fairy Book, and then his second book, the Red Fairy Book, and then the Yellow Fairy Book, and last, the Green Fairy Book. And the Gray Fairy Book is actually being published on June 2nd, so we'll be getting that one as well, followed by the Pink Fairy Book, and then hopefully the rest. There was actually 12 books in that series, and you can see them right here. And they're basically all just collections of fairy tales. So if you are interested in reading more of Andrew Lang's fairy tales, you can go to the regular sites that I've been pointing you at, these ones right here. But you can also visit various websites to read the fairy tales on their own. One of my favorites that I came across was called fairytales.com, but instead of an S, it's Z. So the address is fairytales.com. And they have all of his fairy tales as well as those of other famous authors, such as the Brothers Grimm, Hans Christian Andersen, 1001 Arabian Nights, and continuing even further. It's really fun. They have nice layout and everything, and you can read them on your mobile device as well. But tonight, I have some special guests that I'm very excited to share with you. Tonight, you are going to hear stories from two of my Teen Advisory Board members, Marissa Van Sickle and Ashley Chong. And they're going to be reading some fun stories for you tonight. So I hope you can enjoy the fairy tales of Andrew Lang.
Hi, my name is Marissa, and today I'll be reading The Flower Queen's Daughter from the Yellow Fairy Book. The Flower Queen's Daughter. A young prince was riding one day through a meadow that stretched for miles in front of him, when he came to a deep, open ditch. He was turning aside to avoid it, when he heard the sound of someone crying in the ditch. He dismounted from his horse, and stepped along in the direction the sound came from. To his astonishment, he found an old woman, who begged him to help her out of the ditch. The prince bent down and lifted her out of her living grave, asking her at the same time how she had managed to get there. "My son," answered the old woman, "I am a very poor woman, and soon after midnight I set out for the neighboring town in order to sell my eggs in the market on the following morning. But I lost my way in the dark, and fell into this deep ditch, where I might have remained forever if not for your kindness." Then the prince said to her, "You can hardly walk. I will put you on my horse and lead you home. Where do you live?" "Over there, at the edge of the forest, in the little hut you see in the distance," replied the old woman. The prince lifted her onto his horse, and soon they reached the hut, where the old woman got down, and turning to the prince said, "Just wait a moment, and I will give you something." And she disappeared into her hut, but returned very soon, and said, "You are a mighty prince, but at the same time you have a kind heart, which deserves to be rewarded. Would you like to have the most beautiful woman in the world for your wife?" "Most certainly I would," replied the prince. So the old woman continued, "The most beautiful woman in the world is the daughter of the Queen of the Flowers, who has been captured by a dragon. If you wish to help her, you must first set her free, and this I will help you to do. I will give you this little bell. If you ring it once, the King of the Eagles will appear. If you ring it twice, the King of the Foxes will come to you. And if you ring it 3 times, you will see the King of the Fishes by your side. These will help you if you are in any difficulty. Now farewell, and heaven prosper your undertaking." She handed him the little bell, and there disappeared hut and all, as though the earth had swallowed her up. Then it dawned on the prince that he had been speaking to a good fairy, and putting the little bell carefully in his pocket, he rode home and told his father that he meant to set the daughter of the Flower Queen free, and intended setting out on the following day in the whole wide world in search of the maid. So the next morning the prince mounted his fine horse and left his home. He had roamed round the world for a whole year, and his poor horse had died of exhaustion, when he himself had suffered much from want and misery. But still he had come on no trace of her he was in search of. At last one day he came to a hut, in front of which sat a very old man. The prince asked him, "Do you not know where the dragon lives, who keeps the daughter of the Flower Queen prisoner?" "No, I do not," answered the old man. "But if you go straight along this road for a year, you will reach a hut where my father lives, and perhaps he may be able to tell you." The prince thanked him for his information, and continued his journey for a whole year along the same road. And at the end of it, he came to the little hut, where he found the very old man. He asked him the same question, and the old man answered, "No, I do not know where the dragon lives. But go straight along this road for another year, and you will come to a hut in which my father lives. I know he can tell you." And so the prince wandered on for another year, always on the same road, and at last reached the hut where he found the third old man. He put the same question to him as he had put to his son and grandson, but this time the old man answered, "The dragon lives up there on the mountain, and he has just begun his year of sleep. For 1 whole year he is always awake, and the next he sleeps. But if you wish to see the Flower Queen's daughter, go up the second mountain. The dragon's old mother lives there, and she has a ball every night, to which the Flower Queen's daughter goes regularly." So the prince went up the second mountain, where he found a castle all made of gold with diamond windows. He opened the big gate leading into the courtyard, and was just going to walk in when 7 dragons rushed on him and asked him what he wanted. The prince replied, "I have heard so much of the beauty and kindness of the dragon's mother, and would like to enter her service." This flattering speech pleased the dragons, and the eldest of them said, "Well, you may come with me, and I will take you to the mother dragon." They entered the castle and walked through 12 splendid halls, all made of gold and diamonds. In the 12th room, they found the mother dragon seated on the diamond throne. She was the ugliest woman under the sun, and, added to it all, she had 3 heads. Her appearance was a great shock to the prince, and so was her voice, which was like the croaking of many ravens. She asked him, "Why have you come here?" The prince answered at once, "I have heard so much of your beauty and kindness that I would very much like to enter your service." "Very well," said the mother dragon. "But if you wish to enter my service, you must first lead my mare out to the meadow and look after her for 3 days. But if you don't bring her home safely every evening, we will eat you up." The prince undertook the task and led the mare out to the meadow. But no sooner had they reached the grass than she vanished. The prince sought for her in vain, and at last in despair sat down on a big stone and contemplated his sad fate. As he sat thus lost in thought, he noticed an eagle flying over his head. Then he suddenly thought of his little bell, and taking it out of his pocket, he rang it at once. In a moment, he heard a rustling sound in the air beside him, and the King of Eagles sank at his feet. "I know what you want of me," the bird said. "You are looking for the mother dragon's mare, who is galloping about among the clouds. I will summon all the eagles of the air together, and order them to catch the mare and bring her to you." And with these words the King of the Eagles flew away. Towards evening, the prince heard a mighty rushing sound in the air, and when he looked up he saw thousands of eagles driving the mare before them. They sank at his feet on the ground, and gave the mare over to him. Then the prince rode home to the old mother dragon, who was full of wonder when she saw him, and said, "You have succeeded today in looking after my mare, and as a reward you shall come to my ball tonight." She gave him at the same time a cloak made of copper, and led him to a big room where several young he-dragons and she-dragons were dancing together. Here, too, was the Flower Queen's beautiful daughter. Her dress was woven out of the most lovely flowers in the world, and her complexion was like lilies and roses. As the prince was dancing with her, he managed to whisper in her ear, "I have come to set you free." Then the beautiful girl said to him, "If you succeed in bringing the mare back safely the third day, ask the mother dragon to give you a foal of the mare as a reward." The ball came to an end at midnight, and early next morning the prince again led the mother dragon's mare out into the meadow. But again she vanished before his eyes. Then he took out his little bell and rang it twice. In a moment the king of the foxes stood before him and said, "I know already what you want, and will summon all the foxes of the world together to find the mare who has hidden herself in a hill." With these words the king of the foxes disappeared, and in the evening many thousand foxes brought the mare to the prince. Then he rode home to the mother dragon, from whom he received this time a cloak made of silver, and again she led him to the ballroom. The Flower Queen's daughter was delighted to see him safe and sound, and when they were dancing together she whispered in his ear, "If you succeed again tomorrow, wait for me with the foal in the meadow. After the ball we will fly away together." On the third day the prince led the mare to the meadow again, but once more she vanished before his eyes. Then the prince took out his little bell and rang it 3 times. In a moment the king of the fishes appeared, and said to him, "I know quite well what you want me to do, and I will summon all the fishes of the sea together and tell them to bring you back to the mare, who is hiding herself in a river." Towards evening the mare was returned to him, and when he led her home to the mother dragon, she said to him, "You are a brave youth, and I will make you my body servant. But what shall I give you as a reward to begin with?" The prince begged for a foal of the mare, which the mother dragon at once gave him, and over and above, a cloak made of gold, for she had fallen in love with him because he had praised her beauty. So in the evening he appeared at the ball in his golden cloak, but before the entertainment was over, he slipped away and went straight to the stables, where he mounted his foal and rode out into the meadow to wait for the Flower Queen's daughter. Toward midnight, the beautiful girl appeared, and placing her in front of him on his horse, the prince and she flew like the wind till they reached the Flower Queen's dwelling. But the dragons had noticed their flight, and woke their brother out of his year's sleep. He flew into a terrible rage when he heard what had happened, and determined to lay siege to the Flower Queen's palace. But the queen caused a forest of flowers as high as the sky to grow up round her dwelling, through which no one could force a way. When the Flower Queen heard that her daughter wanted to marry the prince, she said to him, "I will give my consent to your marriage gladly, but my daughter can only stay with you in summer. In winter, when everything is dead and the ground covered with snow, she must come and live with me in my palace underground." The prince consented to this, and led his beautiful bride home, where the wedding was held with great pomp and magnificence. The young couple lived happily together till winter came, when the Flower Queen's daughter departed and went home to her mother. In summer she returned to her husband, and their life of joy and happiness began again, and lasted till the approach of winter, when the Flower Queen's daughter went back again to her mother. This coming and going continued all her life long, and in spite of it, they always lived happily together.
Hi, my name is Ashley, and today we'll be reading The Sunchild, and this is one of Andrew Lang's fairy books. Once there was a woman who had no children, and this made her very unhappy. So she spoke one day to the Sunball, saying, "Dear Sunball, send me only a little girl now, and when she is 12 years old you may take her back again." So soon after this, the Sunball sent her a little girl, whom the woman called Latigo, and watched over with great care till she was 12 years old. Soon after that, while Latigo was away one day gathering herbs, the Sunball came to her and said, "Latigo, when you go home, tell your mother that she must bethink herself of what she promised me." Then Latigo went straight home and said to her mother, "While I was gathering herbs, a fine tall gentleman came to me and charged me to tell you that you should remember what you promised him." When the woman heard that, she was sore afraid, and immediately shut all the doors and windows of the house, stopped up all the chinks and holes, and let Letiko hidden away, that the sunball should not come and take her away. But she forgot to close up the keyhole, and through it the sunball sent a ray into the house, which took hold of the little girl and carried her away to him. One day, the sunball having sent her to the straw shed to fetch straw, the girl sat down on the piles of straw and bemoaned herself, saying, "As sighs the straw under my feet, so sighs my heart after my mother." And this caused her to be so long away that the sunball asked her, when she came back, Letiko, where have you been so long?" She answered, "My slippers are too big, and I could not go faster." Then the sunball made the slippers shorter. Another time he sent her to fetch water, and when she came to the spring, she sat down and lamented, saying, "As flows the water, even so flows my heart with longing for my mother." Thus she again remained so long away that the sunball asked her, Letiko, why have you remained so long away?" And she answered, "My petticoat is too long and hinders me in walking." Then the sunball cut her petticoat to make it shorter. Another time, the sunball sent her to bring him a pair of sandals, and as the girl carried these in her hand, she began to lament, saying, "As creaks the leather, so creaks my heart after my little mother." When she came home, the sunball asked her again, Letiko, why do you come home so late?" "My redwood is too wide and falls over my eyes, therefore I could not go fast." Then he made the hood narrower. At last, however, the sunball became aware of how sad Letiko was. He sent her a second time to bring straw, and, slipping in after her, he heard how she lamented for her mother. Then he went home, called 2 foxes to him, and said, "Will you take Letiko home?" "Yes, why not?" "But what will you eat and drink if you should become hungry and thirsty by the way?" "We will eat her flesh and drink her blood." When the sunball heard that, he said, "You are not suited for this affair." Then he sent them away and called 2 hares to him and said, "Will you take Letiko home to her mother?" "Yes, why not?" "What will you eat and drink if you should become hungry and thirsty by the way?" "We will eat grass and drink from streamlets." "Then take her and bring her home." Then the hares set out, taking Letiko with them, and because it was a long way to her home, they became hungry by the way. And they said to the little girl, "Climb this tree, dear Letiko, and remain there till we have finished eating." So Letiko climbed the tree, and the hares went grazing. It was not very long, however, before a lamia came under the tree and called out, "Letiko, Letiko, come down and see what beautiful shoes I have on." "Oh, my shoes are much finer than yours." "Come down. I am in a hurry, for my house is not yet swept." "Go home and sweep it then, and come back when you are ready." Then the lamia went away and swept her house, and when she was ready, she came back and called out, "Letiko, Letiko, come down and see what a beautiful apron I have." "Oh, my apron is much finer than yours." "If you do not come down, I will cut down the tree and eat you." "Do so, and then eat me." Then the lamia hewed with all her strength at the tree, but could not cut it down. And when she saw that, she called out, "Letiko, Letiko, come down, for I must feed my children." "Go home then and feed them, and come back when you are ready." When the lamia was gone away, Letiko called out, "Little hares, little hares." Then said one hare to the other, "Listen, Letiko is calling." And they both ran back to her as fast as they could go. Then Letiko came down from the tree, and they went on their way. The lamia ran as fast as she could after them to catch them up. And when she came to a field where people were working, she asked them, "Have you seen anyone pass this way?" They answered, "We are planting beans." "Oh, I did not ask about that, but if anyone had passed this way." But the people only answered louder, "Are you deaf? It is beans, beans, beans we are planting." When Letiko had nearly reached her home, the dog knew her and called out, "Bow wow, see here comes Letiko." And the mother said, "Hush, Thou beast of ill omen, wilt thou make me burst with misery? Next the cat on the roof saw her and called out, Meow, meow. See, here comes the Tico. And the mother said, Keep silence, thou beast of ill omen. Wilt thou make me burst with misery? Then the cock spied and called out, Cock-a-doodle-doo. See, here comes the Tico. And the mother said again, Be quiet, thou bird of ill omen. Wilt thou make me burst with misery? The nearer Latico and the two hares came to the house, the nearer also came the lameo. And when the hare was about to slip in by the door, she caught it by its little tail and tore it out. When the hare came in, the mother stood up and said to it, Welcome, dear little hare. Because you have brought me back, Latico, I will silver your little tear. And as she did so, and lived happily after with her daughter in happiness and content. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of Bedtime Stories. Make sure you never miss an episode by subscribing to the library's YouTube channel. You can also find out what's happening at the library by visiting us on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. Or you can always just go to the library's website. I hope to see you again for the next episode of Bedtime Stories, but until then, be well and sleep well.